Man, that YouTube player looks significantly different. That is a weird and unexpected update. We had that hilarious video we watched about celebrating too early during Smash games. Make sure you guys check that. That was excellent. And then this was recommended afterwards. Is talking about why it's almost impossible to ban fighting game characters. Which banning characters is a solution in a lot of different video games, especially like League of Legends, one I watch a lot. That's a really popular choice. But a lot of games like Overwatch or like a lot of fighting game tournaments and stuff, there is no ban option. There's no option to ban a character maybe you're having problems with, or maybe they might see as like broken in the game or something like that. So everything's up for grabs. But for a lot of people who play fighting games as like legacy players, and they only play like one character, maybe even two characters their entire career, I can see why it'd be a lot less attractive of an idea to allow banning in a competitive space.
We've seen plenty of the weird and creative ways that fighters have tried to get ahead. In-person intimidation, tanking in a grand finals so your buddy can get more ranking points, or simply trying to play in a tournament that you've already lost out of.
What?
One of the more legal and accepted ways to improve your placements
loser
is to
keeps playing under
simply
friend's name. Holy crap.
Pick a top tier. Just pick him. Yo, pick a top tier. You want to win, yo?
Yeah.
Fucking top tier.
I don't even like. But what happens when a character is too top tier? Prevailing
Tom
logic
Hanks.
states that you would just ban that character from competitive play, right? That's a bit more complicated than that.
Seems like a really
the fighting
bad
game community
solution.
generally resorts to banning characters as a last resort, but there are a few special circumstances where the ban hammer can be dropped. So today, I'd like to talk about those special circumstances.
He got
But
fucked
before
up.
we begin, I would appreciate your support in the form of a subscription on YouTube and a follow on Twitter. Fighting game single-player content has evolved quite a bit over the genre's lifetime. I made a pretty good video about it in my opinion. More modes and reasons to play by yourself have been added over time, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. In an effort to keep players pumping quarters into arcade machines, computer-controlled fighting game characters could often pull off feats of reflex that would be physically impossible for you.
Almost said eating his ass. He's not. He's eating his face. He's eating his face.
But if you were able to overcome everything a game threw at you, the final obstacle would come in the form of an overpowered final boss. It makes enough sense that the last fight of your run would be the most difficult one, but some of these characters are so powerful that it's obvious that they were never meant to be controlled by humans at all.
Coming to the fucking
These characters'
Smash.
toolkits include, but are not limited to, touch of death combos, unblockable setups, unpunishable special moves, and other mechanics that will smother any hint of a real competition. There are some occasions where developers will tone the character down in versus mode, but other times they'll give you access to the unnerfed version via hidden code, which can lead to some pretty interesting debates on the character select screen. This guy is probably the most broken fighting game character there has ever been. He's permanently in a state of flight, so he can't be thrown or hit by lows and can't be stunned.
Damn.
And every single one of his 6 moves, most of which are executed with the tap of a button, would be good enough to be broken in just about every fighting game to ever exist. Boss characters like Ivanus are banned because there's simply no learning how to fight against them. If these bosses were allowed in tournaments, grand finals would almost always be boss versus boss, and you'd be at a nearly insurmountable disadvantage in character select if you didn't pick them. There's no getting better against the SD Akumas and Omega Rugals of the world, because even their greatest weaknesses are covered up by even more oppressive strengths. But once you move past overpowered boss characters into the meat of a fighting game roster, discussions about banning specific characters from competition get way more controversial. And to understand why, I'd like to talk about the concept of the matchup. Matchups are the result of a game community's ever-changing hypothesis about how one character can perform against another. Players base these conclusions off of a few different metrics. They look at their tools, advantages, disadvantages, tournament results, and personal experiences to see which characters stand above the rest in a hypothetical battle between evenly matched expert-level opponents. For example, in Street Fighter IV, Dalsim's long normals and keep-away game wreak havoc on big-bodied grapplers like T-Hawk and Zangief, meaning that between players of equal skill level, the Dalsim player should win 60 to 70% of the time.
Okay.
You could also say that Dalsim has either a 6-4 or 7-3 matchup against these characters. But just because he has good matchups doesn't mean Dhalsim is actually all that great in Street Fighter IV. For example, if he fights an equally skilled Kami or Abel player who actually has the tools to deal with his zoning, he loses these matchups 6-4 or 7-3. It's from these estimations from which tier lists are made. High and top tier characters typically have better matchups on average than the rest of the cast, and ban-worthy characters typically have overwhelmingly good matchups, losing or going even with few, if any at all. Every game will naturally have top and low tiers, but when a game has one or two characters who clearly stand above all others, there's a valid conversation that needs to take place among a game's community about how good is too good, and whether or not to swing the ban hammer. If you don't believe me, take a look at the results from just about any random Third Strike tournament and count the number of Yuns and Chuns in the top spots. But despite their dominance, they were never outright banned because they were never really the only character you could use with any sort of success. Dudley, Ibuki, Makoto, and Kin players were still able to win major tournaments despite being at a natural disadvantage against characters in the top tier. So when you're considering banning a character for being too good, ask yourself the following question. Is one character making the rest of the entire game obsolete? If so, bring it up with your community and see if they agree. Run your own tournaments with a special rule set and see if it catches on. If not, maybe the character in question isn't good enough for a ban in the first place? But this kind of conversation has been re-litigated in recent years with Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Smash for the Wii U. Meta Knight and Bayonetta utterly dominated their games. Their worst matchups were 5-5, and they were considered to be overly represented in the professional scene. The difference here is that while the Third Strike community were able to reconcile with Yun and Chun-Li at the top, a huge portion of the Smash community wanted their best characters in the game banned outright.
That's really fucking good.
Meta Knight in particular was absurdly prevalent in the rarefied air that we call the top 8. Among major tournaments from 2009 to 2011, Meta Knight found himself played at least once by 44% of all top 8 participants. And at one point in September of 2011, Meta Knight was actually banned from tournaments by the Unity Rule Set Committee, the creators of a standardized rule set for Super Smash Bros. Brawl that was used in more than 150 tournaments. A similar resistance was seen during Bayonetta's reign of terror in Smash 4. The greater Smash community got flashbacks of their masked Wing Spectre, and decided that enough was enough. Crowds began to protest, booing Bayonetta players they have enjoyed watching in the past, sheerly due to their choice of character. If you were playing Bayonetta in Smash 4, the crowd was automatically cheering against you. The difference there being that there was no governing body who was brave enough to ban the Witch Lady from tournaments. And as a result of the perfect storm of an oppressive character and an equally annoyed crowd, we got one of the most gloriously awkward grand finals to send Smash 4 off in one of its last major showcases.
To send us in the grand final set number 2. We ain't done yet, baby.
What?
Get to the click clack. Let's do it.
What are they doing?
The ugly truth of the matter is this. In order for a hard ban to be dealt, a character needs to be so disgustingly broken that a game's entire community from across the country recognizes the need for these kind of restrictions. Time is of the essence here, because the longer the ban can is kicked down the road, the more entrenched the users of these characters become, and the more resistant they'll be to drop their character because they aren't competitively viable anymore. Nobody wants to sink hundreds of hours in training mode grinding out setups only to be told that they can't use them in tournaments because a tournament organizer said so. But this is actually a catch-22. A community needs to come to a unanimous decision quickly, but you don't want to ban characters too fast because there may be a way to fight them, sending them down the tier list faster than Wesker from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. By not paying careful consideration, keeping your ear to the ground, and doling out bans where appropriate, you actually run the risk of shrinking your game's community, as was the case with Soul Calibur IV. There was a character in that game called Hilda, a knight from the Wolf Crone Kingdom who just so happened.
I wasn't in competitive at the time, so I have no idea why this is a problem.
Combo so powerful that those in the community called it the Doom Combo. Named as such because thanks to a bug that happened when binding multiple inputs to the same button, Hilda could pull off a Tekken-style wall-to-wall combo ending in the opponent being launched out of bounds.
Wow.
This meant that one mistake sentenced you to a nearly automatic loss or being one mix-up away from tasting the earth outside of the ring.
Just like that. Just like that.
And then you hear the booze.
But like, okay, that's cool, but see, that's the part where it's like difficult. Because if your point is to go there to win the tournament, I understand everything else, but like if there's money on the line, isn't it hard to tell people to not go there to win when they know a strategy that's hard to battle against? You know? And if it really is that broken, it is up to the developers to ban that character, you know?
Wow. High pressure makes us very excited. That really long halberd.
You have to play a very strong game to compete with a Hildy player that knows what they're doing.
That was insane.
Weirdly enough, though, Hilda wasn't as well represented in the top spots in tournaments as her perceived strengths would lead you to believe. She had what I'd like to call Vanilla Sagat syndrome. Much like the Muay Thai specialist from Vanilla Street Fighter IV, Hilda's game plan completely crushed players who weren't among the best in the community.
Right, okay.
Even then, she still got slapped with a ban because Hilda's specific brand of nonsense was still overbearing to the 99% of Soul Calibur IV players who weren't the top of the top of the top, causing them to leave the scene for other games released around the same time, like Tekken 6 and Street Fighter IV.
Okay, see, that is tough, yeah, that's tough.
It ended up taking years of discussions, hundreds of forum threads, countless pages of arguments, and a lot of hurt feelings before she was banned in the most widely used tournament rule set. Ultimately, it was too little too late, as the game was years old at that point and most of the community had already packed it up and left for greener pastures.
Wow.
Now, I would like to say that the cases of Meta Knight and Hilda are incredibly rare.
Ooh, Jesus.
As I said, banning characters
Is that fucking
of Meta Knight and Hilda are incredibly rare.
Mewtwo is top tier, though. He plays top tier exclusively.
As I said, banning characters is kind of the nuclear option in fighting games. And the preferred method of dealing with these overtuned characters is to take them into the lab and figure out what your character can do against them.
Right.
And if you're not fighting somebody like Pet Shop from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, there's at least one technique you can use or character you can learn how to play in order to beat any problem you're facing.
Yo, this bird is crazy.
Banning characters won't solve every problem with game balance, and in some cases, could actually even make it worse, like in a situation where banning the top characters in a given game only served to make the next tier down an even more oppressive god tier. After all, banning top tiers like Chun-Li won't do anything for the low tiers like Q, Sean, or Oro. Character bans have always been a very controversial and heavily debated step in the grand experiment of the world of competitive fighting games. And I hope that I've helped you understand why.
That was disgusting. Okay,
if you want to read more about these types of topics, I recommend reading The Culture of Digital Fighting Games, Performance and Practice by Todd Harper, as well as some of David Serlin's writings on the topics of bans and matchups in fighting games.
Sure.
I'll add a link to both in the description below. I'd like to thank my Patreons again for their support, and once again, please feel free.
Yeah, that's a pretty good vid. I think it covers a whole lot. It'll be cut down quite a bit on my end. But yeah, it covers quite a bit. I just think that in the end, you know, what you guys call outrage culture, right? I think sometimes always comes from like a valid place where it starts. That's something we can normally all agree that there is a conversation to have. But it doesn't mean that just because you're outraged that of a character's strength means it needs to be banned. You know, when they talk about unfair advantages, I don't think RNG always constitutes an unfair advantage. And, you know, of course with the Smash thing, it's like really difficult because he has a chance to instantly kill, you know, the person. Hypothetically speaking, if you're at 100% health and you get hit by it, you're KO'd. And everybody just, that's unfair. I mean, it is RNG. So there's also a chance that it couldn't do that. And the chances that it even works with the setup is even less unlikely. And so that, I think, is because there are real answers to that question. In a Smash situation, the character shouldn't just be outright banned, right? And I think if those answers aren't as effective, but there's a whole compilation even on YouTube already of people dying with Hero because it's actually just a decent character, not even top tier. So, even though I know some, you know, tournaments, I don't think it would be wrong either way to make the call to ban them. I personally just don't think I would care that much, you know? Like, of course, well, if you're the victim of it, wouldn't you feel different? Probably not. I mean, as long as I'm aware of it, and if I'm going to a tournament, you are the one who needs to be aware, and especially for as popular as fight tournaments are now, you got to do your research. I think that's fine. I think it's okay to have high skill cap. I think it's okay to have RNG. I think those are two things that are fine, and I think for me, it's easy for me to get Skitten to pick up a game like Smash if she picks up that character and has great success using it, you know? And so that's really good for the game in terms of like a party game, and maybe not as good necessarily for like the competitive scene. You know, if I was trying to get like a cheap win in competitive, I could try to maybe pick up the character, but I just don't think I don't see a lot of people doing that. And a lot of people I talk to who actually play Smash against that character don't have any issues as far as like the win rate's concerned or anything like that. So personally, I think it's got a I think it's really hard to ban characters, and it needs to kind of stay that way. I think that you shouldn't over rush to make your decision based on people's outrage, and you got to really play it by the numbers. And then if it's like killing your fan base, then yeah, you got to make a decision, I guess. But that was a pretty good rundown. I'll holler at you, man. Peace.